Now we're up to the final trial. If you can call it a trial, really, we'll see. This is the Phaakis, in English, Phaeacians, translations. So after leaving Calypso, he is shipwrecked once more. I mean, obviously he has created a dingy boat, and he washes up exhausted on the island of the Phaakis. I'm going to be saying it in the Hellenic pronunciation because the Phaeacians, like how you get Phaeacians out of Phaakis, I have no idea. Whatever. And here he is met by Princess Nafsika, which finds him and brings him to the palace of King Alcinous and Queen Arete, basically. Basically, they are peaceful and highly civilized seafaring people. They treat him with exceptional hospitality. He reveals his identity. He tells them of his entire story, and they're like, wow. You know, they hear the story of his adventures. In return, they load him with gifts and provide him with a ship and sail him safely back to Ithaca while he sleeps. Not really a trial. It's kind of like the completion. Number 12. Step 12. It's the final transition and the last stage before he returns home to face the situation in his palace. And, you know, cleanse his final self within himself. Like once he's done all that, you watch the first video and the second video for that. So this is the trial, you might say, of grace. After 10 years of struggles, monsters, and a whole bunch of other crazy stuff, cleansing himself and defeating all these temptations and all these trials that he had to go through, it shows that at the end of all this, there is grace in the universe. It's pretty much tying into trial 10, what I was saying as well, the final reserves. Just when you think you've had enough, you've shown your loyalty, the cosmos will come and carry you forward that extra step in the last mile. This is also symbolized in other religions and other scriptures, but I'm not going to dive into that too much. He is finally carried home, not by his own cunning, not by his own strength, not by his own, trials or anything else, but the kindness and generosity of others, of humanity itself, showing that there's still grace within humanity and within the cosmos. Symbolically, you could say it represents the positive side of the human and divine interaction or intervention, you could actually say. After all the trials and all the inner work, the universe can still offer grace. That's what it shows us. That's what it's actually representing here. It is the bridge between the long, painful wandering and the final confrontation in Ithaca, which is his own self and cleansing himself. The soul has been refined enough that it no longer has to fight for every step. It can now be helped and carried towards home. Now, if we're going to look at the names as well, if you want to look at a little bit just how they are all kind of resonating here. Again, all these names, like we can go deeper dives into every single one of the trials. This was a pretty easy trial, so I'm going to dive into a little bit more just so I can give you a little bit of an extra feeling with regards to some of the names, what they mean, and how the symbolisms ultimately all align with each other with regards to when you go into even every single one of these trials and look even deeper. For example, Nafsika. Basically, it's the ship girl or the farer of ships. She symbolizes youthful purity, kindness, and gentle guidance. She's the first helpful feminine figure who discovers the shipwreck of Odysseus. Then we have King Alcinous. His name means strong-minded or valiant mind. He embodies wise, generous, and civilized kingship. He is the king that listens to Odysseus, and then he grants him safe passage. Arete, her name means virtue, excellence, or moral goodness. Okay, she represents the wisdom and the moral strength and balanced feminine power in the royal court of the people. If you notice, it's a trinity, by the way. Reoccurring symbols between different religions, by the way. Just throwing that out there again. Food for thought. Food for thought. At this point, I've pretty much kind of covered the entirety of all the trials. This here kind of goes into a little bit also trial 10, which I didn't really want to step too much into, but I did talk about it a little bit, where the last part of our reserves, when we feel as if we've done, we don't have any more to give and we've depleted, that's when grace comes and the divine intervenes and helps you and says, you know what, you've done enough. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be at the end of the journey. Sometimes it's mid-journey or during very difficult phases, because our journey might be endless and continuous. So all these symbolisms here might be of reoccurring things that might happen in our lives constantly. Just at the end of the trial, where you're like, you know what, I don't have any more to give. Something happens to come and help you out. You know what I mean? That's why you don't succumb. Again, we juxtapose this back to the trial number 10, so I can give you a better closure onto that trial. allowing this trial here to be a bit of a bridge to help dive into a couple of stuff that I didn't really want to go into too much in trial 10 because it wasn't the moment and I was going to veer off into a lot of different directions. But in this trial here, I think I can really go a little bit back and give some extra context over there in that trial. Just when you have depleted all your reserves, if you actually show that, you know what, I'm not passing the boundary of ethics, or I'm not breaking the laws of the divine, I'm staying true to all these things, and I have kept the faith and all stuff, that's when the cosmos and the divine comes and says, you know what, we're going to intervene and we're going to give you that push. Maybe what you need is those last miles for this part of the journey until you actually find enough strength, and we help you into that next phase where you start working again and you have new trials. And so it's something that can happen a lot of times. And in this case here, it kind of shows that at the end of his trial, at the end of all his trials, it's kind of the accumulation of everything, that sometimes that last trial, what it's showing you is that last passage is you don't have to fight for it anymore. You've proved for everything. You just have to have faith in the goodness or in the divine itself and the cosmos itself, and it will take you that last mile itself and finally bring you over to the last trials. Now, when you look at this entire through line here, you'd be arguing, well, how does this kind of like correlate to what we were saying in the first initial video where he's killing his own inner demons and all that stuff? Very different kind of situations here, because some people might confuse this and say these are parts of Odysseus, but throughout Odysseus' journey, he cleansed all those parts, and he's just by himself now. So what are the suitors, and how can you say that the suitors are a part of his inner demons? His crew was his temptations, or his physical or his conscious thoughts, and all those kind of like surface level temptations and whatnot. That's what his that's what his crew was. It's much more of like a human level confrontation and trials and errors with regards to even with our own logic when we actually analyze ourselves. Again, going back to one of the videos, one of the things that I said, know thyself. When you're analyzing yourself and you're like, I'm not patient enough, I'm not this, I'm not that, and you change those things and you slowly cleanse those elements from your character as a person. But deep within, the demons reside, or the energies, or the other parts with regards to when you have left home that have run rampant. It goes to the dark energies. Again, look at those videos, how I described those. And those are the inner demons, and that's the final cleansing with regards to, it's not really just your personalities or part of your trials, it's the final confrontation of just cleansing every last shadow inside you. And those shadows do reside and remain inside you, regardless, unless you actually finally confront them. And if you notice, they are completely separate to the story of him doing his entire journey, and he confronts them only once he comes back to his own self, once he is recouped into his own home, into his own kingdom, into his own palace, and once he does the trial of the axes, which is again the second video that I've done in all of this, which explains what the trial of the axes are. And once he's ready, at that point he's regained his youth and he's ready to kick some ass. That is the final reclamation, the final joining of the with the soul, and the final transcendence. And what resides at that point? Those final shadows. And that's your final confrontation at that point. It's like cutting off and cleansing those final shadows within you and getting rid of every single one of them. It is the final kind of like symbolism, or the kind of final, you might say, heroic moment where it also as a story kind of resonates with regards to, now I am complete. I don't even have to bother with trials. I'm just seeing straight up, like I'm so centered, and I've gone through this transcendence, and my conscious mind is so centered at this point that I see my shadows for what they are, and they're just the vile suitors and temptations, and I'm going to cut them down. That's the final heroic moment where it's the payoff in all of this. He's done the entire journey, he finds his youth, and he's back, and now we get the final heroic moment where it's like, bro, I've been there, done that, I've seen some shit, and at that point it's like, you're nothing to me, I'm going to cut you down. It's the final confrontation, it's the final cleansing where it's like, they stood no chance. That's what it's symbolizing. At this point it's like, bro, you're ready for the trial, and you're ready for the cleansing, and now you're ready for the binding back again, and the union with the soul, which is symbolized by Penelope. Full circle, that's the entire story of the Odyssey. I hope you enjoyed this little series. I'm going to make one more video where I have like a small quick synopsis, now that I've gone through all of these, of the entirety of all these 12 trials, and try to create a bit of a chain, kind of like, through line all of these, to make it even more obvious how connected and cohesive this entire story is, and why in one of my first videos that I said it's a story as old as time. And it really is ultimately the symbolism of every single one of us in our return back home. I hope you enjoyed this video and this entire series of videos, and I hope it was enlightening to a certain degree as much as possible, and helped you at the very least look at symbolisms in your own way and have the approach of applying free thinking to all of this, and try to see it for what it is. Like, once you actually see all the details on the stuff, I think a lot of this stuff becomes pretty obvious what the story is about and what it's not about. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, peace be with you.